There can be only one podcast, and may it be the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks. I'm Matt.
And I'm Wes.
Hey, hey, hey. It's wrestling time again. Wrestling time.
Wes, who can we blame these wrestling podcasts on, and who can we blame the death of WCW on?
Who can we blame? Death of WCW. Vice must know that their Dark Side of the Ring is killing it in the ratings.
Well, they must. This must be the biggest return on their investment, so they're like, let's just bleed it dry.
Like we said, there's plenty of stories out there, plenty of tragedies in the wrestling world. In fact, I don't think they've gotten to, there's still a good handful out there. I think we talked about that.
Yep.
That they could address. This one was better than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be a rehash of a lot of things we've heard before. But they had to talk about some points here and there, and about doing the blame and everything. It was interesting to hear people's interviews. I heard Booker T was mad about how they edited him, but I didn't think I never saw anything that would be embarrassing or whatnot. But he said he'll never work with them again.
Well, a lot of guys have issues with Vice because the way they feel like it's chopped up. But I don't think, I can't look at anything and go, Booker came off bad.
I didn't think so either.
I can't recall anything that like stood out where I would go,
wow, that's awful.
Yeah. I can't believe he would say something like that.
Yeah, there was nothing like that or anything. I know. Maybe they edited something good out. I don't know.
Well, I know Booker is not a big fan of Meltzer. So I don't know if maybe something like that had, I don't even remember, but I don't think Meltzer was even covered in that at all. Because he is so
very rarely
anti-Bischoff and stuff. So
yeah,
and this was like Bischoff production for sure.
Well, yes, kind of was. How'd you like Kevin Nash?
I thought Kevin Nash definitely was relaxed.
He was relaxed, and no apologies from this man who said, "I don't care. I was making money." And I mean, that was honest.
Well, I think Kevin Nash always comes off pretty good in everything he does. Now the trying to always talk about how you can rationalize the finger poke of doom, I don't think he can do that. I think it completely damaged everything.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was totally just a Kevin Nash idea, because if it was just a Nash idea, why was Hogan the one that looked best? That's a Hogan idea.
That's a Hogan idea. Yeah, I agree.
So, but no, I
want to say that on top of watching Who Killed WCW, then I watched the after show, which is Jim Cornette's 4-episode series of his thoughts of Who Killed WCW. And my goodness, what was it, part 3? When it had Vince Russo on it?
Yeah.
That's got to be. And I really wish they would have interviewed Jim Cornette during that episode too, because he was on fire on his podcast.
I think that he has made himself, he has been so honest about Russo and everything. There's no need to retread that. And
no, I just like that it's never, he never repeats insults when it comes to Russo. And you said you listen to his podcast and you learn something new every day. I mean, that man, Jim Cornette, does not say the same thing twice about Vince, besides calling him a liar. But
yeah,
I mean, the insults, I chuckle every time. Every time.
Well, and Cornette is always going to look at things so much more advanced than anyone else because of his inner, like he was with WCW and got so frustrated and got out of the business and started his own thing. So he only danced with Bischoff and that side of it very, very gingerly, which is more of what this talks about, is the Bischoff taking over this like broken toy.
Yeah, it would have been so early back then, there wouldn't have been anything Bischoff wasn't the problem to Jim Cornette back then.
Well, yeah. Cornette's biggest problem was Jim Herd.
Yeah.
And just how poorly everything was around them. So, but yeah, Jim Cornette is always entertaining.
So, looking back at these episodes, and by the way, we both highly recommend the episodes. We're going to spoil everything from the episodes. Watch it. It's really good. Come back, listen to what our thoughts are, if that thoughts are. But I wanted to say that I thought when they broke down Starrcade, as the breaking point, the first misguided direction. My opinion, my questions for you, because I had some questions for you. Is there a way to come back from Starrcade, or was it all downhill from there? I mean, because I get, by the way, for anyone who hasn't watched it, they don't want to watch it. They built up this Hogan Sting, and they did it well. Seems like. I was kind of watching.
Just to say what they could have changed, I think the biggest thing that they did is they went too long. And I know that it had the highest buy rate ever, so you can't argue the business. But I think...
Well, Starrcade was their WrestleMania, which is why they wanted to throw it there. But yes, it stretched out.
I felt like if they would have done Hogan and Sting at Halloween Havoc versus Piper and Hogan again...
Halloween Havoc would have been a good one. That's good.
I think it would have been a lot better. I think that the momentum would have... But because Hogan was losing steam. I mean, that people were ready for this Sting match, and so much was going on in between it. And I think it's great to draw it out, but I just think it went too long. And the fact that Hogan could exercise creative control in that way, I think what should have happened was, if you're going to botch it and then go back, and they did so many rematches shortly thereafter. I mean, they hot-shotted it for the next 6 to 8 weeks. They did house shows, they did nitros, they did another pay-per-view. I think Spring Stampede was. I just think that they should have just sent Hogan home and say, let's figure this out without him. If he's going to just, for lack of a better term, shit can everything, pay him and just let him sit at home.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good because he's finally defeated. You got to give the fans some breathing room. You give some time apart so that when he comes back, he can get impactful, can get the heat, get the rivalry. But you're right. From that direction, now Hogan's gone. In a way, Sting has gotten rid of Hogan. It's something that everyone's tired of. And when he does come back at their summer show or whatnot, maybe give him 6 months or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
And then he comes back, and it's the biggest pop ever. And now we're getting ready to go into, like you said, Halloween Havoc or something. You can ride back into another and get a big buy rate, or the next Starrcade, depending on how late you keep them.
I've always, anytime we talk about this, I just think that Hogan's, I can't say enough about his heel turn from 96 at Bash at the Beach until basically he ran out of steam at Halloween Havoc 97. And he was out of steam at Starrcade. And then for him to say Sting's head is not in it.
Yeah.
Dude, that's not your call. That's just unfortunate that, and I guess that's where you say, well, if Vince is going to screw Brett out of the title, why didn't they just, but because Bischoff was Hogan is got so much stroke they couldn't do anything.
Yeah. And that was a problem. That was one of the big problems there. Did you watch? The other question to you was, did you watch this when it was happening, Starrcade and stuff? Were you watching WCW?
I was not at the Starrcade pay-per-view watching party that we had in town, but we had the VHS like the next day.
Okay, so you were keeping up with the storyline live back in the day.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so your thoughts when you first saw this, what did you think? Did you notice anything like that? Were you that upset? Were you like, well, they could have done that better? Or, I'm happy Sting won.
It didn't make any sense. When you watch it, Brett getting involved the way it did, it's so poorly put together.
So you agreed with a lot of fans it was just botched, and you were disappointed.
Yeah, it was very much a botch. To have, sometimes if you've got that many smart people that know the business and how they can screw up a finish, if this finish sucks, that's the last thing you remember.
So the way they get away with it is, you said, just giving Hogan some time off, and maybe that would have made things a little bit better, and brought back, kept the streak alive, so to speak, because they keep talking about the streak. Do you think? Because that was the turning point. WCW never matched. They always stood behind WWF.
Well, I don't know if that was I just feel like that's what ultimately made you go, why am I watching this?
Yeah.
It's kind of like if Austin would have wrestled Shawn at WrestleMania and Shawn would have screwed Austin out of the belt. You would have went, wait, it doesn't work like that.
True. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, where was the point of no return for WCW? In your opinion? Was that it? Was it Starrcade?
I think that played a
Halloween
role.
Havoc?
I think part of the downfall of WCW was
That was the beginning. That was the first tip, and then suddenly they couldn't right the ship after that, and it got messier.
But you could look at numbers, and 98 is such a big year. 98's their biggest year, so you can't say that killed them from a financial point. But I think that it hurt because if you
It
look
showed
at
their Achilles heel.
yeah,
They
but
weren't
you can
impenetrable.
look at it and go, well, look how hot they were in 98, but look at how hot WWF got. That's the telltale sign. They really took off. Both of them were hot, but that's when WWF overtook
Surged back.
them.
Yeah.
So they went from being the number one trailblazer that turned all this around in 97 to be a very hot number two, the hottest number two they've ever been.
Yeah.
And by the time they did the screwed finish at 98, that was absolutely terrible if you're not going to let Nash run with the belt. And that's what I mean. They build up these big shows, and they don't know where they're going after it.
Okay, so Goldberg says, bad idea to have Nash beat me like that. Do you
True.
agree or just true?
Well,
Okay.
I think that who should have beat him was Scott Steiner.
Scott Steiner should have gotten it, the win. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And Scott Steiner should not have been part. Scott Steiner could have, if you were going to have an NWO Hollywood Wolfpack thing, to me, it would have made a lot more sense to have an NWO led by Scott Steiner
That's true.
and then have the Wolfpack and leave Hogan away from all of that. Let Hogan let his creative be which one is he going to go with. That's what he wants to do. But I just think Scott Steiner no one was more credible then. Like people talk about, well, God, Goldberg looks like this. And he does. Dude, look at Scott Steiner. If Scott Steiner, watch him jaw with the front row. I mean, he was as believable as you could be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. For real.
So, yeah, I think that's...
That would have been the more believable one.
Yes.
That's interesting. So not Bret Hart, not... I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that's an interesting...
No, I mean, I think they totally botched Brett. But I think if
obviously.
you're going to have somebody beat Goldberg who beat Hogan, why not make somebody else? Nash did not need to beat him.
And to be honest, you could build Steiner up into
And
this...
even if you let Nash beat him, instead of Nash doing the figure poke of doom,
It could
let
have been
Steiner
Scott
come
Steiner
out there and beat him.
because he's Hollywood, NWO, and it makes more sense.
Well, that's when they made that new red, and it wasn't Wolfpack, and that's what I mean. It got so mixed
there was some
up.
LWO, and remember Blue Meanie had his own NWO and the WWF.
So anyway, that's what I think. That's my thoughts.
All right, so there's no way to right the ship after Stark. I'm just trying to get that point again.
I don't think it's necessarily saying there's any way to right the ship. I think that you have to. We all run out of creative ideas, and that's what a lot of this was talked about. It's like, where do we go next? So if that's the case, let some guys take time off because it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Let them heal up, feel better, and let some guys come in with new ideas. And if you don't have new ideas for the old guys, at least have new ideas for younger guys, because the product was so hot then and house shows were still a big part of the business. You could have them off TV and say, even if Flair's off TV, but Flair is going to wrestle Sting at a house show, people want to see that.
That's money. Yeah.
Or if you want, say, look, Hogan, we don't want you to work nitros, but we want you to work one big house show on the weekends, and we're going to run giant arenas.
Yeah.
And let Hogan be a draw that way. Even if he didn't really wrestle, he could work a tag match.
That's an interesting take, because then you take away these top tier, you let your second, your B group, the Booker T's, the ones that weren't shining back then, the Eddie Guerreros, now they can step up. They're going to get big. Then you have a bigger stable to pull from to have better matchups, because you've built up these other guys. So when the legends come back in, they got
somebody to go
legendary match, someone who can go up against them. And then, everyone wins in that scenario, because then you improve on your brand. That's I like that idea.
I just think that if you're going to keep the same creative people in place, like Sullivan and that stuff, and you know that you cannot play ball with these bigger guys, just save them for appearances and stuff where people will still pay to see that. People are going to pay to see Hogan.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
They may not want to watch Hogan do the same old
right, and it avoids your product getting stale on TV,
right?
By seeing the same old tired matches, the same old tired people, the same old tired all talk, no show. And no, I like that. And then you had a very talented group, and then you elevate them to a different status, and then you bring back in the big dogs when they have someone worthy, instead of fighting amongst themselves every pay-per-view, same matches. Now you've increased your stable of villains and heroes.
And I don't think that WCW did themselves any favors by going with Thunder. I think that bled them out creatively.
So you disagree with Thunder too?
Yo, totally.
I remember when Thunder came out, because we watched the very first Thunder.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, this is awesome. We get 2 days a week. I do understand where they're coming from now. That was a mistake, because too much of a good thing waters down the product.
Well, and they talked about the financial side of it, where TBS just wanted the show.
Right.
They weren't going to... The finances of WCW, I'm not saying this is totally legit, but the finances are so muddy.
Well, that's what they were saying.
To follow.
With TV, it was kind of, the shell game with the money there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did not think Thunder looked like a cheaper product. You could tell it was the B Squad, a lot of them, who came out there. But I think Thunder put on some great matches from time to time. I really enjoyed watching Thunder.
I just think that if you're used to writing 4 weeks pay-per-view, 4 weeks pay-per-view, 4 weeks pay-per-view, and then you go 4 weeks times 2 pay-per-view, 4 weeks times 2 pay-per-view.
I agree.
With the same amount. It's not the wrestlers, it's the infrastructure.
Yeah. No, I agree. So what about Saturday Night Wrestling, which was a classic back then? Do you think that should have been canned?
Well, I think that had already kind of came and gone.
Okay. It was still going on in the 90s.
It was still there, but it was already so de-emphasized.
Oh, I mean, no, it was basically an elevated house show.
It was
like Heat was.
Yeah,
Heat
right.
was basically
it felt like the third show before Thunder got there.
Yeah. Yeah. But I remember seeing one fun Saturday Night Wrestling. I don't know if it was you, because we'd work Saturday nights at the mall together. We were Saturday Night Wrestling was playing. Old Fit Finley would come out. Always good to see him. Norman Smiley, Big Wiggle. Always enjoyed him. I enjoyed Saturday Night Wrestling.
Yeah,
nothing big. The Scott Anderson brothers, Scott and Steve Anderson, the Anderson brothers, simple tag team and regular generic wrestlers with a big S on their, just jobbers.
Okay,
generic jobbers. They went out for the tag team championships against Scott Hall and the Big Show. That was their big event. Big Show failed to show, so Scott Steiner came out and just whooped them both and placed one on top of the other, set on them both, flexed while the referee counted to show how ridiculous Saturday Night Wrestling was. But I still enjoyed that. I thought it was funny.
Right.
Plus, I was a big Scott Hall fan.
Yeah, I just felt like it was by far not a priority, and that's okay. You don't have to have everything a priority, but they just didn't have the infrastructure for it, and they had too many wrestlers for the amount of creative people for those wrestlers.
And I wish they would have, for that, to do it. They did have a lot of wrestlers. They have a lot of wrestlers. But I think Thunder and even Saturday Night Wrestling, you could probably divide them up into tiers. Hey, sorry, you're the new kid. You got much. You need. This is like development. It's like rookie league playing Saturday Night Wrestling. And then when we think you're big, and make a belt. maybe.
Well, that's what they've tried to do with WWE was a brand split and having different creative, and that has always come and gone. But when you let it bleed, it's never going to work.
I get that. I would have kind of split the belts up a little bit, like kept the belts all there, but maybe, I don't know, Intercontinental and World Champion on Nitro. Then you got the U.S. Champion and you got tag team over on Nitro too, but you got U.S. Champion and I don't know what the cruiserweight.
I don't think
and
that.
Then the TV champion would have been on Saturday Night Live.
That would have mattered anyway.
Well, I mean, with the different, but you get to highlight all your people. They're all working. You know what I'm saying? Everyone's getting some TV time, and that way elevating your work from one to. I would have done a tier system. I agree with you. I don't think they should have done this, but I'm saying if that was the order.
Well, I think they kind of already did that. I think that they did it, but it was out of like, if your top guys are not going to work with your mid card guys, then you're going to have shows, and that's what made Nitro interesting is you would have these incredible matches by guys, but Benoit was not going to wrestle Hogan.
Yeah, it never was going to happen.
And Jericho was not going to wrestle Hogan.
Or Goldberg.
So you had those things where it kind of happened, but I think the biggest thing, like I said, they just caught fire. Sometimes you catch luck.
Yeah, catch lightning.
Yeah, and I think the reason the NWO worked is because people were so sick and tired of Hogan in that red and yellow, and it made so much sense for Hogan and Nash and Hall to be like this New York invading.
So from this show, this four episode series. By the way, 4 episodes good enough? Too long? Too short?
I think it was
just right.
There you go. Just like the Three Bears.
There you go. Just right. I was going to say Goldilocks.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. Did anyone, in your opinion, come off bad? Like, ooh, you shouldn't have done that. You look bad, man.
I don't think Russo ever comes off.
Russo came off the same he's always come off. I don't think he did anything to change anyone's opinion, good or bad.
I just think that he keeps telling the same story about what he did, what he came into, and how things were a little better, but they turned his water off. But you watch those shows and they are terrible.
Yeah, and the problem with Russo is it's the same rehearsed story. He said this story so many times.
It doesn't age well.
It doesn't age well. It makes less and less sense unless he's stupid. It's just...
I think he came off bad when he said he was more talented than most of the guys on the roster. I'm sure he came across that way to those guys backstage because he was coming off this red-hot run by Vince where he was a big player in it, and I'm sure he carried himself that way. And, it's great to be a leader, but part of being a good leader is you want to follow them, and I don't think Russo had anybody want to follow him.
All right, so switching topics and Who Killed WCW, Who's to blame between Goldberg and Bret the Hitman Hart on his accident? Both told their own sides. Both, of course.
I think Goldberg has had a history of working very reckless, and I think that he said, they've watched many times, he said, watch the kick. I think that Bret, if anything in his whole career, has came across where he goes, I'm just trying to do my job. I'm trying to do, I would never hurt anybody. But if you're going in there against this guy, you have to be a little more prepared.
Okay.
And I think Bret's great, and I think Bret is...
No, yeah, we've talked about
if he's
him.
not in your top Mount Rushmore, he's the next go because he was... But I would say knowing you're going in there against a guy who is extremely reckless, and you can talk to all of your peers about, just potatoing and cement mixer and all the terms those guys use, for him to go in and not be a little more prepared and say, hey, let's outline this. I know that you can't call it in the ring, so we're going to work out an 8-minute match, and we're going to get this down pat. Kind of like how Hogan and Rock did, and how Hogan did in most of his big matches.
Right.
You know, let's be ready. I think that someone should have said that to Brett, and I think they should have made Goldberg be part of that. And I don't think that would be rough on Bill if Brett said, let's work this out in Florida for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. There you go. All right. Interesting.
I mean, this is a work. You can practice it.
Yeah.
And Brett is good enough to not make it look like you grab me, I fall here, you pick me up.
He can adapt to other wrestling styles. And
I think
people.
he could make it look a little bit more than just a spot fest, because he's talked about that. He did it at Wembley with Davey and all of this stuff. And those guys could do it. I think that was the biggest miss of that. But Brett is also coming off this situation where he's just jaded from WWE. They're having their biggest success since he's left.
Yeah.
And Owen tragically dying.
Yep.
You know, he was not the performer mentally he was 2 years before that. So I can see where he was just like, don't hurt me. Instead of going, I'm going to make sure you do not hurt me because we're going to work this match out.
Whereas a Bret Hart 10 years earlier.
2 years earlier.
2 years earlier would have done something.
Yeah, that would not have happened. He would not have let it happen, but he was so shook.
By all the events that were going on.
Correct.
Okay. I guess the big question is, out of the 4-part series, who, in your opinion, killed WCW? They never answer that, which I think is great. It leaves it up to the viewer.
I think Thunder was the biggest death knell to them.
Wow, love it.
And I think that the merger completely wiped them out. Because if you look at, and God, we've said this before, and I don't want to feel like I'm trying to rip off what one of the guys said, but look at the Braves payroll in 2004 versus where the Braves were in 96.
Exactly.
It was a big difference. They let Glavine go. They let Maddox go.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Jones was gone. They let so many key guys out of that were Hall of Fame guys. I'm not saying Andrew Jones was, but I mean, he was almost hit 500 home runs. But all those guys left. They held on to Chipper. That was it. And that was because Time Warner was like, no, this is the budget.
Yeah.
We don't care if you've won more pennants than anybody else.
Don't care about
and y'all
your
are
legacy.
Like rock star baseball players.
They were second only to the Yankees in baseball.
The only reason they're second to the Yankees is the Yankees won more World Series,
won more World Series,
but nobody won more games than the Braves.
No. But I mean,
they were a hot ticket.
It was one of those hats that you would see no matter where you were. There were Braves fans,
and it's not just because we're in Louisiana and that was as far as the Southern team.
I'm talking about Washington, Oregon, people wearing Braves hats all the way up to New York.
I think that was it. So I think that once that happened, like they talked about, and there was not a lot of accountability on that show.
None.
Everybody just kind of pointed the finger, and that's what kind of kills any relationship. If no one goes, hey, man, I shouldn't have done that. That was on me. No one said that, other than Bischoff may go, well, I mean, I didn't know what else to do at that point. Well, don't let it get to that point.
Yeah. In my opinion, it is Bischoff. Whoever's in charge, they're the ones that have to put their house in order. That there's all the infighting, that the wrestlers are running things, all this stuff. What do you do? Because I agree with him. You got to have Hogan come. But Hogan doesn't want to look bad. He doesn't want to, So you give him creative control because Bischoff says that's the only way I can bring him over. Is that the only way?
Well, that may be the only way, but
Because
I think
I feel like you back up one more money truck.
I think that if they're going into Starrcade in '97, you're doing these nitros, building this up in November, in December. If you're not happy with how tan Sting is, and you're not happy with his mental state, why is that not addressed then? Why are you addressing it the night of the show and say, "Hey, brother, that's not Sting"?
Yeah. No, I agree, but that's just how I felt watching it all. I think that he should have had the house in order. He should have put people in order. If he was really going to be the boss, and I felt like there was just another way to get that contract going on, things could have been different. Now, the thing is, it's not just one person. I know that.
But if you're going to give Eric this, like Kevin said at the end, where like there's nobody else that beat Vince but Eric. That is true.
It's true.
If you're going to give him that credit, you've got to say, well, why didn't it work?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of relationships fall apart when someone doesn't say no to something somebody wants, regardless if it's buying a house, having a kid, switching jobs.
It's true.
You know, whatever that is, if someone doesn't say no the way Bischoff says, I didn't say no about Thunder. You know, he kind of said, well, if Ted wants it, I'm going to do it. He should have said, hey, look, this
Put my foot down. Well, he even said that he would, if to have it all over again, he would have said no.
Well, my God, how would you not say that now?
I mean, yeah, now.
Jeez. But he should have, he was inside the trenches with that. He could tell how difficult. If he can't get Hogan to play ball, why are you doing another show? Do you want this to happen in 3 more months? When you got another red hot angle and you go, nah, brother.
Not feeling it. Yeah.
I mean, I think that if anybody looks at it from a performer, Hogan got it so hot and Hogan poured so much water on the fire.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. No doubt about that.
And then to drop the belt to Goldberg on TV, come on. Why did you not do that on pay-per-view?
Because they were, Bischoff, again, obsessed with ratings.
Well, but someone should say, someone
should have spoken up.
Then if you say, is it Bischoff or Hogan? If it's both of them, it's short-sighted and they're killing the product by doing that.
Yeah, I agree. Several mess-ups. I'm shocked they didn't mention, and there were so many mess-ups back then, so probably too many to count, but Halloween Havoc, Ultimate Warrior, the flop that turned out to be, not just the match, but that the feed cut off. They lost track of time, and the feed, and so we don't see Diamond Dallas Page Goldberg.
But you know, you can look at that and go, well, we got a hard out. Well, if you're an hour and a half through the show and you're like, we're 18 minutes over right now. We got to start cutting matches. We're going to cut the match. Hey, we're not having the tag match tonight because we're not going to be able to get in.
No one.
Whose fault's that?
Yeah.
You can't. Bischoff can't say, well, that's blah, blah, blahs.
He would. He'd find something. It'd be, I bet he'd say that, well, I knew it was going over. I said, guys, you got to do something about it. They said, don't worry, we are. And so I didn't know.
Yeah.
Or can we buy more time? Yeah, we can do that. Let me get on the phone. Okay. No, they said no. Oh, no, I didn't know that. There seems to be always an excuse. But either way, good show. Worth watching. Don't know what they're going to do.
It's just such a cautionary tale of if you're working towards success, know what you're going to do if you ever catch it.
It's true. All right. Well, folks, tell us what you thought. If you saw the show, let us know. And we'll see you next time on Princes of the Universe.